who live up in northern Quebec on the reses, the first time they come down to say Montreal on a trip is the first time they ever have to deal with that racism or that people looking at them different. And a lot of times it gives them that feeling of insecurity, and they can't wait to get back to the Reds because they've had a bad experience. Did that happen to you, like when you first got off the Reds the first time or the second time?
Yeah, it happened at school a few times, but I had so much brothers around, and we were pretty tough. My brother was a pro boxer, and my uncles had the boxing gym in Sault Ste. Marie in the city, and a couple of my cousins made the '84 Olympic. The one that got canceled, boxing team. So we knew how to protect ourselves pretty good. But when we were by ourselves, when I went to Kenora, Ontario, that was the first time I really kind of faced any kind of direct racism on a daily basis. I was 16 years old, and there's I bet you for the first month and a half, I literally cried myself to sleep in Kenora, wondering why people would. I wasn't the biggest guy. I only played at 170, 175.
Yeah.
I was just barely 6 foot, and some of these guys were 6'4", 6'5", 230, and they were pretty big guys. And so you fight them at the hockey rink, and that's trying to make the team. Then you got to play the exhibition games and fight the opposition. Then you go to school and have a few fights there. So I stopped going to school. I didn't go to school the rest of the grade 9 year because I couldn't fight in two places at one time. And Chris, I wouldn't even. There's one incident that happened in Kenora I'll never forget. There's a thing in Canada called the Missing and Murdered Women,
Yeah.
and I was walking down the street one day in Kenora, and somebody thought I was looking at him and his girlfriend were making out in the car or whatever. And he grabbed me. He was going to throw me over the ledge of the hotel, and the ledge had to be 20 feet down, and it was into the rocks, into the water. And thank God, some of my friends I made on the hockey team seen me struggling with this man, a full grown man, and they came over and rescued me. And I could have been, thrown over that edge. But those are the type of things that I faced on a regular basis. So when I talk about the age of 16, where the game for me kind of switched from love of the game to survive in the game, was probably the biggest movement, and a kind of that stubborn bone in me, and the stuff that happened to our people. I just refused for them to chase me home. The more they name called me, the more they fought, the more determined I was to stick it out. But do I remember hockey? I don't remember hockey at all. I don't even remember any practices. I just must have been one of those state of minds that just get through the year. And I came home and swear to God, I never ever put myself in that position again. But the next year, it must have did pretty good for my hockey development, because the next year I came home to Sault Ste. Marie, and I made the Sault Greyhounds in the Ontario Hockey League, which is a major junior hockey, one of the three major junior hockey leagues that we have in Canada, with the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the Western, and the Ontario. So to play with the Sault Greyhounds near my home was probably, I wouldn't say worth it, but it was end result.
But you could definitely play in the NHL. There's no question about it. Do you think, your upbringing, where you're from, had an adverse effect on your career in the
I
NHL?
Yes, I definitely
Uh,
do, because when even a coach, one of the coaches, grabbed the stick, and he said, "I'll show you Ted Nolan School of Stick Handling," and he started using it like a tomahawk and started
uh, that
pounding it.
sucks.
All of a sudden, what are you going to do? I mean, you're
Sucks.
your first year pro, and I only knew what I knew, and I charged right after him, and I gave him the uh, biggest sucker punch I could find, and jumped on
Yeah.
top. And I remember I skated right off the ice, took my equipment off, drove to the little apartment I was renting, told my wife at the time, I said, "Pack up, we're out of here. We're done." He said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "I sucker punched the coach." I said, "I don't think you're going to live with that too long." So, anyways, I get a long story. I get a call from the general manager, and he arranges a meeting with the coach, and we went out for a while. We talked out our differences. But I think at the time it was probably so embarrassing for the organization to say, "Hey, how come this kid left?" So we dealt with it, talked about it, and forgot about it. And probably this is probably about the second or third time that I even mentioned the incident.
Wow. Do you think either of your sons are experience anything like that, or or you think times have changed where hopefully they're not dealing with stuff like that, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? With both my boys, I built a hockey rink in my backyard, and uh, and just like my brothers taught me, my brother was a pro boxer, and he taught me how to switch hands from left to right. And he said, a lot of hockey players don't know how to do that. He showed me how to punch from the hip and all that stuff. So I started teaching my boys, and as soon as I started teaching them, I'm going, time they turn pro, fighting will be out of the game for sure. I thought. So, anyways, Brandon turns pro. Sure enough, the fighting's still there. So I said, Jordan, we're going to teach you how to fight. So you just have to teach them to defend
Hmm.
themselves. But their upbringing and my upbringing was totally different. I
Yeah.
mean, their fridge was always full. The heat was, if we wanted air conditioning, we went and got air conditioning. They needed a ride to the rink. I give them a ride. So their life was a lot different, and we were kind of like mother and mother and Papa Bear. We went to every practice. We watched the behaviors of the coach, see if anybody said anything derogatory to them, and
Yeah.
so no, they didn't have too much outside of the odd stuff facing some opposition.